Jon Sumrall has given us a lot of things to be happy about, Adrian. It's January. It's mid-January now. We've all done the new year, new me thing. I think that's starting to kind of wear off for most people now. Seems like it's for real. Of course, again, it is only the middle of January, but it seems like, at least from a roster construction standpoint, what Jon Sumrall is doing for the Florida Gators is legitimate. But before we get into any of that, welcome back to the All Kinds of Weather Forecast. I'm your host, Neil Shulman, of course, joined by my co-host, Adrian Perez. You can follow him at Gator Diamond Pod for his Gator Stickball, which is going to kick into high gear pretty soon because Gator Baseball is about to get started. They also cover some Gator Softball, so some good coverage over there. Also follow him at ADNDEL for his personal Gator basketball and baseball-related takes that he gives on the show, but in a typed fashion. Of course, I'm the guy behind at All Kinds of Weather. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram as well. Of course, Facebook at In All Kinds of Weather. And if you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and do so to our YouTube, to our Spotify, to our Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, including leaving us a like on YouTube, leaving us a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcasts. All that stuff helps us reach more of Gator Nation with our great content. So before we get into that great content, let's talk about our sponsor, 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants, and they also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's savings for your child's college, investment advice, or even just your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures, one generation at a time. For more information, please contact them, 866-998-5879, or visit their website, 401kgeneration.com. All right, Adrian, we got a lot to talk about. We wanted to put this off a little bit until the portal season had closed, but we're at a point now where too much has happened, and there is still a week to go in the portal cycle. So what we're going to do is just break down everything that's happened so far. A lot of landmark things have happened, including but not limited to Jaden Woods, who many people think is going to be a future All-American on Florida's defense, going to the portal, fans freaking out, or at the very least going, man, that sucks. We're going to really miss him. And then him coming right back because Florida just goes and pulls him out of the portal, says, hey, your future is here, man. Let's get to work. Jaden Ball obviously coming back. Talked about that in a previous show. The same thing that happened with Jaden Woods happened with Amir Jackson going to the portal. Florida lures him back out. And, of course, Florida gains a bunch of players from the portal as well, including Eric Singleton, Bailey Stockton, Aaron Philo, and many, many more. Well, DJ Coleman, of course, got to put him in the highlight too. There's a lot to talk about here. So let's just take the 35,000-foot view and then zoom in from there. Give us your, I guess, initial reaction or your general views on the portal as it stands today on January 13th.
Well, starting today, listen, you got to go back a couple weeks ago, man, when Gator Nation was like on the cliff's edge and, things weren't going as good as they had hoped, I guess. We're very happy with players that were coming in, but there was a strategy to what they're doing with this portal stuff. And I texted back then that Gator Nation was almost acting like if Billy Napier was still head coach. I tweeted that Billy Napier was still head coach, that Rob Sale was still the offensive coordinator. They were acting like Billy Napier was still the play caller. And this was a brand new coaching staff, man, led by a coach, who has won at every level, led by an offensive coordinator who was offensive coordinator of the year. So the way I looked at it, Neil, is I got to trust these guys until they give me reason not to. Okay. And that was the approach that I took into it as a fan. While others, for whatever reason, some people out there on social media have their own agendas and stuff like that. So you always got to be, picking through the weeds on that stuff. But they had to let it play out, man. And I preface everything, Neil. I should have said this, though. I preface everything by saying none of this matters unless the results on the field are there. If they go 4-8 next year, nothing that they did here this offseason in the portal, in retentions, in anything's going to matter, right? Because that would have been a failed season, right? You can't go 4-8. Okay, so you got to show results on the field. But that aside, I mean, they've pretty much hit a home run on just about everything since the minute that he got off of that plane, really. The two main factors that I see that they're doing with this portal, how they're using it. Number one, I think they're going for players that they're familiar with, right? You know, you got the players that Trotwine's familiar with on the offensive line from Penn State. Then you got, you know, obviously Faulkner is bringing in that group of players from Georgia Tech, quarterback, the wide receiver now in Singleton that he coached up for one whole year. Offensive lineman from Georgia Tech, a tight end now from Georgia Tech. And then obviously White on the other side of the ball, you know, gets a DB from Kentucky. So they're bringing in players that they're familiar with that they could help teach the other players, you know, their system, their way of doing things. And then secondly, I think they're also using the portal. And this is where sometimes the fans get confused, right? The fans see a portal acquisition and they want that guy to be a superstar, right? No, it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter when it is. If they got somebody from the portal, they want that person to be a superstar. And what they're doing also is that they're backfilling. They are creating depth with the portal. They're getting snaps for their depth, okay? They're bringing in snaps. They're bringing in experience that are not guys that are going to necessarily be starters, but they're bringing them in for the purpose of providing depth, for being in the rotation. And that's how you have to see them. Is it better than just going with a freshman? I think so, right? You are bringing in sometimes SEC experience, Power 4 experience, depth to be part of your rotation. So that's what they're using the portal for also. And then they focused mainly on the retention of those 5 players that we're going to talk about later. But the way I see it, Neil, they've hit a home run throughout, using a clear strategy, a clear focus. They look like a very well-organized machine to me, man.
Florida's operating like a serious program. I think that's the start and the end of the analysis of where we are in January. I mean, we said this with the hiring of Phil Troutwine. We said this with the hiring of Buster Faulkner. The moves Florida's made tell me that this I don't want to say administration, but certainly this regime, this coaching staff is operating like a serious program does. And we'll go into all the examples about why I think that in a minute. But Florida doesn't keep a Jaden Baugh in the last administration. Or if they do, that's all they do. They sink all their resources into that one basket, all their eggs in one basket. And maybe they do pull out all the stops to keep Jaden Baugh, but then they lose Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown the third. Like, there's no way the Billy Napier regime keeps all 3 of those players, and Miles Graham, and Jaden Robinson, and Aaron Childs, right? There's no way that all of that happens in the last regime. Some of it, maybe. Some of those moves in individuality, yeah, probably. Napier's really good at building relationships. He's good at going to the boosters, or he was good at going to the Florida boosters and relating to them in a way that would make them want to give their hard-earned money to keep some players. So some of that happens, but definitely not the totality of what we've seen. So that goes to Jon Sumrall's, I don't want to say killer instinct because he hasn't coached a game yet, but certainly his understanding of the urgency. And it shows me some action behind his words, right? Like we've heard him go on shows and podcasts and talk about how, yeah, I have a 5-year plan, but I have like a 5-minute plan too. I want to win now, not next year, not next week. No, now, today. I want to make moves today, immediately, to put this program in the best position possible to win the games right in front of us. And we are seeing him make those moves because Miles Graham is going pro after this year. right? I think barring the unforeseen, like a terrible year or an injury or God forbid, knock on wood, whatever, he's gone. He's going to the pros. So is Jaden Ball, right? They just are. They're gone. So the very fact that he is putting so much stock and effort into what his team is going to look like this year tells me, all right, I'm not just taking the snap and punting the year away. I'm not waving the white flag and just saying, come on, Gator Nation, give me a break. All right, Billy Napier left me a terrible situation. What do you want me to do? No, he is doing everything he can to win now, this year, year one. And we see other schools around the country maybe not doing that. Look at, I mean, I wouldn't say that they're exactly hemorrhaging players, but look at Auburn, right? They fired their coach. They're losing, I would say, still their most talented player in Cam Coleman. Now, he did not produce as he was expected to, but a lot of that was the quarterback situation there. But I would think if Jon Sumrall was at Auburn, he would have looked at Cam Coleman in the same vein that he looked at Dallas Wilson or Vernell Brown or Jaden Ball or Miles Graham, et cetera, as a top priority among other top priorities. Kept him and kept a lot of other pieces as well. So Auburn, I would say, is doing far less successfully than Jon Sumrall is at Florida right now. And that matters because Auburn, if you remember the schedule, is Florida's first opponent in SEC play next year. So that kind of stuff is going to matter. Yes, we are gauging Florida on its own individual merit. We are also gauging Florida in comparison to its direct opponents that they're going to see on the field next year. So with that all said, let's start talking about the Gators roster. Let's talk about what Florida has retained first and foremost. Let's start by, let's do that. The pieces that Florida's retained, because I think that we agree that's one of the most important pieces of an incoming coach's job. Year one, you've got to maintain your rocks, right? So that's your Miles Graham. We talked about him. Your Jaden Robinson, talks about him. Talks about Jaden Ball, the big piece there. Obviously, you keep the two big explosive wide receivers. You keep Dallas Wilson, who only really played one game, but that was quite a game against Texas that cost them a spot at the college football playoff. So you know what he can do. Obviously, Vernell Brown as well. The legacy, probably would have wanted to stay at Florida anyway, but you still threw the bag at him to ensure that he would and not leave it up to chance. Your quarterback, your returning quarterback in Tramel Jones, who has at least some familiarity with the wide receivers. Obviously, DJ Lagway was the guy taking the snaps with the ones all last year, but still there's some continuity there. And then you've got the guys on the defense that are coming back. The guys, unfortunately, Jameer Grimsley, I thought could have been a good piece here. Grayson Howard, I thought could have been a good piece here. And Aaron Gates could have been a good piece here. But for the most part, Florida kept the guys on their defense that I thought they really needed to keep, especially at linebacker. So let's just start with the 35,000-foot view. Well, we did that 35,000-foot view with the whole team. Let's shrink that down to like the 25,000-foot view and just talk big picture with the guys we retained. Adrian, of all the guys Florida has gotten back from last year's team, two-part question. What do you think it all says just about the roster retention? And who do you think are the most important pieces that he kept? Aside from Jaden Ball, the obvious one, because he's a bull.
Yeah, you don't want to get too repetitive here, but, it says that Sumrall and Caldwell, because you got to start throwing Caldwell into this, right? He's a name that we kind of aren't mentioning. And, I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of radio and stuff like that, and he is in the backgrounds, man, and no one's talking about him. And I think his fingerprints are all over this, dude. All right, because there's a concerted effort to bring these players back to, I'm not going to say make a run, but to be really competitive this season. Okay. And that was in the cards. And that's something that Billy never did. Napier never did that. And people begged him, man. I remember people were begging him to go into the portal, bring some players in, supplement, use that portal, man. We have some good pieces, but they need some help, and he wouldn't do it. His portal strategy was night and day compared to what this is now. So they've made a concerted effort to bring these players back. And I'll be honest with you, Neil, out of all the players that they weren't able to retain, honestly, there's only one player, and it's only because of his position, okay, that I would say, yeah, that one is one that I wish they would have really had made an effort to bring back, but I get it. And that's Mekhi Barrow. And that's just because he's, it's tough to find these, 340, 350-pound defensive tackles. It just is. And in the portal, it's very difficult. Okay? So he's the only guy, because of his position, that I say, man, that was a miss. But everything else, they hit. And they hit on the big names that you went through already, and I'm not going to go through them. Obviously, the most important guy coming back for basis of this fan base, to me, obviously was Jaden Bogg. And just because of what we talked about a little bit on the last show, it almost felt like if the fan base wanted Jaden Bogg to be the hill that we were going to die on, right? If you're going to bring back somebody, bring back Bogg. I think what happened with Travis Etienne maybe had a little something to do with that, right? We didn't want to lose them.
Wrong Etienne. They're both
one?
snakes, but yeah, Trevor Etienne.
Yeah, Trevor Etienne.
All snakes look alike in the grass.
Exactly. So maybe that had a little something to do with it. Okay, the fans didn't want to lose another star running back to a rival nonetheless. So it certainly looked like Bogg was that hill that this fan base wanted the administration to die on. So they made that a priority. They brought him back. The Jaden Woods one, he entered the portal. Not that there's a big difference between going into the portal or not. Tampering's taking place regardless. It doesn't matter. It's not like if the agents aren't talking to all these other schools. But for Woods to actually be in the portal, actually had taken a visit, right? He took a visit to Texas, right, Neil? Texas, to have taken a visit.
Either he took a visit or he was planning to. There were definitely communications between those two sides.
Yeah. But then to be able to reel him back in, and the rumors right off the bat was that it really wasn't money. Okay? It really wasn't about money with Woods. That it was maybe a little bit of, there was rumors of maybe he was a little homesick, but maybe it was also he wanted to go somewhere where he felt that he could win. And he wanted to be a part of maybe a team going to the college football playoffs. So it looks like Sumrall had to sell him on that. Okay, Sumrall had to recruit him on that. And that's what they did, man. Not only did he go, but Faulkner went, the new running back coach went. They went to go. No, not the running back coach. That was Bogg. The defensive coordinator.
White.
And then bam. Yeah, White, and then bam. Went to go see him at his house. So they made these guys priorities. They brought them back. In my mind, the big five, right? They went 5 for 5 with the big five. And that's going to be the foundation for this team next season. You have 5 bona fide, potential first-round NFL draft picks, man, that you brought back when it's all said and done. So that's huge.
You've got your big 5. I've got my big 10. And for those of you looking at the bottom third, thinking that Dustin, our producer, put the wrong text there saying top players we added with player retention. No, he didn't, because you add players to your roster every year. You assume that because the NIL giveth, the NIL taketh. The transfer portal giveth, the transfer portal taketh. You assume nothing. You assume you will have to recruit 80-plus players for your roster every single year. So Dustin was correct in putting that text there saying player retention, the top players we added, because the second that FSU game ended and we all settled down after, trolling them with the mock tomahawk chops and all that stuff, and, the elation of winning that rivalry game to salvage a terrible season ended, Florida's roster consisted of goose egg, 0 players. Not literally, but in practicality it did, because you had to re-recruit all of them. And here are the 10 that I'm going to list off that I think Florida absolutely had to retain. LJ McCray, 5-star signee, ridiculously talented, hasn't really played up to a 5-star billing yet, but the potential is there. Had to get him back to anchor that defensive line. The linebacker crew. So McCray is 1. 2, 3, and 4, all linebackers, Myles Graham, Aaron Childs, Jaden Robinson. Got them all back. VB3, like Myles Graham, a legacy kid, didn't really think he was going to leave. There were some rumblings about Ohio State, but not really serious. He was not especially strongly considering leaving. But still, you had to pay him money. You did. You got him back. So that's 5. Dallas Wilson is 6. Jaden Baugh is 7. And I'll just stop here and say Georgia and Texas were tampering like crazy for him. And I'm not even tattletaling on them because you know what? It's not illegal unless someone steps in and does something about it. So Georgia and Texas, by the letter of the law, were breaking that law quite dramatically and quite recklessly. And I'd say even just disrespectfully. But you know what? They can, because no governing body can step in and tell them that they haven't done anything illegal. Why not? It's not theft if no one catches you, right? I mean, there's no way to prove that they did it, right? I mean, I know they did, but there's no way for any governing body to step in and bring them to court and tell them, tell the world, hey, this is the fact, they did this and that. So until proven otherwise, maybe Florida does the same thing. Hint, maybe they already did with a certain quarterback that they got. Just going to leave that there. But yeah, Jaden Baugh, got him back. That was a big pickup. Jaden Woods, another guy that Texas tampered with ridiculously hard. I'll say the same thing. Not trying to tattletale. It's me calling out the NCAA. You don't like it? Do something about it. Because I'll tell you, there's a lot of smoke to that, to the fact that they were tampering hard with him. But again, until you do something about it, there's no there's no reason to even hint that it's illegal because you haven't said that it was. Amir Jackson, another one like Jaden Woods, the tight end, goes to the portal. You get him back. That's big. And then the one we have not talked about yet, Bryce Thornton. I really like what he can do as a safety. We saw flashes of brilliance from him as a freshman, basically finishing off that Ole Miss game, picking off now starting quarterback for the New York Giants, Jackson Dart, to win that game and then end it with a second pick a few minutes later. So those are my Big Ten. Initially, it looked like Florida was going to go 6 for 10, 7 for 10, maybe 8 for 10, especially when 2 of them directly hit the portal in Jaden Woods and Amir Jackson. But then Florida lures them out of the portal, winds up going a perfect 10 for 10. And that's what I mean by saying Florida's operating like a serious program. Billy Napier probably keeps 4 or 5 of them, maybe 6. But especially in a case like Jaden Woods, there's no shot in hell that Napier is going to convince Jaden Woods, yeah, we can win together. Any school that's recruiting against Florida is going to look at his record and just laugh. They'll tell Woods, go look at the Wikipedia page, dude. Just don't take my word for it. Just throw it in ChatGPT. What's Billy Napier's record at Florida? There's no chance. So the fact that Jon Sumrall is able to flip that switch in the recruits' minds, especially in a kid like Woods' mind, tells me that he's coming off serious to the recruits and to the players too. I guess in this case, we're talking just about the portal guys. He's coming off as a serious coach who's really serious about winning to the players. I think so. I've said so. Sounds like you agree with me, but we're just talking heads on a podcast. What's most important is that the players believe it. And so far, it seems like that's exactly what's happening. And speaking of which, let's shift gears a little bit from the roster retention pieces to the pieces that we have lost. This will be a little bit quicker of a section because, again, Florida, I would say, has not lost any significantly devastating pieces. I liked Aaron Gates. I liked Mekhi Barrow. I liked Aiden Mizell, but I don't think any of those are really crippling. The one that I would say, again, you could have maybe tried to wring some talent out of, you and I disagree on this, DJ Lagway, but again, there was too much negative there, and there was too much work ahead, even by my own admission as a fan of Lagway's, to say, yeah, we should have pulled all the stops to bring him back. No, we can't, and especially not at the price he was asking. So I guess I'll turn it over to you here. Were there any departures that either shocked you or that had you dismayed? That like, damn it, we really wish we would have kept him.
No, none really. I mean, I'm kind of with you on like Aaron Gates maybe, but when you start thinking about Aaron Gates, Mizell, Trey Wilson, one of the factors that I'm sure Caldwell took into play was the fact that these guys have had a hard time staying healthy. Okay, so you got to take that into consideration, man. Like that old adage goes, man. The best ability is availability, right? So these guys have a whale of a time staying healthy, man. So when you take that into consideration, and then when you see what we brought in that we'll talk about later, man, I'm happy there. You know how I felt about Lagway. I'm happy there that he moved on. The only guy, and I'll reiterate it again, is Burrow, and that's just because of the position that he plays. But everybody else that they lost, that went ahead and transferred out, transferred out for a reason. Probably not gonna be a huge impact player, and then probably came in and still wanted a pay raise. Because that's normal now. These guys think, that they should come in and demand a pay raise every season. And if they're not going to get it here, then they're going to try to go somewhere else and get it because that's what their agent or their handlers are telling them. So that's where Caldwell has to run this like a professional organization, do a cost-benefit analysis, know that it's not endless funds. And if you want to demand more money, then you're going to have to demand it somewhere else, and I'm in full agreement with that and have no real qualms of anybody that went ahead and entered the portal for Florida. There's still 5 more days, right? I think the portal closes on the 16th, which is Friday. But to the best of my knowledge, I think they have signed everybody that is available to come back. They've announced that they're re-signed and coming back to the best of my knowledge. I mean, the last ones were like Brendan Bett and maybe Hanks Jr., which based on position, I think Bett is a good retention. And obviously Hanks Jr. being a legacy on a very important position and the ability he showed last year, his true freshman year, getting him back was also very big. So those two are 2 big retentions in my opinion. But all in all, I'm happy with it, man.
As long as he keeps, or as long as Brendan Bett keeps his mouth dry and the face masks of his opponents dry, I'm fine with bringing it back. I mean, it can't hurt. There's obviously there's no reason not to stockpile bodies on the defensive line or the offensive line for that matter. And then completely unrelated, but breaking news literally just seconds ago, Florida gets a transfer defensive back from UCLA and Kanye Clark. So that's another nice piece you're adding to the secondary. Goes to show, I was just about to talk about how I could maybe say Sharif Denton would be missed on the defense just because I thought he could take a step forward. Obviously, a lot left to be desired in 2025, but I thought, all right, he's talented enough. He's fast enough. I think he does have decent instincts. Maybe he could be coached up. Oh, no, it doesn't matter now. He's gone. So now we need another body there. There's the answer there, or at least an answer there. I'm going to miss Nashawn Montgomery a little bit. I thought that there was upside there too, like with Denson. But again, he hadn't really done a whole lot to justify any tears or sadness for losing the player. Obviously, I mean, he's a good kid. I know people who know his family, and they all say nothing but good things about him. So as is the case with everyone departing the program, wish you guys well, unless you go to a rival, of course. But actually, we can't even say that about LSU. I was going to give a disclaimer about Trey Wilson going to LSU, but we don't even play them anymore. So who cares? He's going to be in his senior year. He's going to go pro after this year. We'll never have to face him again. So thank you, college football. Thank you, Greed, for ruining that of us. But yeah, I mean, a couple other guys that go pro. I know Hayden Hansen, a guy that I actually will stand my ground on this. He could have been very successful in the right role at Florida, obviously, because Billy Napier has the IQ of this can of Sprite. He doesn't know how to use him correctly. But if he's used in a primarily blocking role and is only asked to catch a pass or two here and there every blue moon or so, I thought he could have put on some tape that makes NFL scouts go, okay, yeah, sure. Let's interview him, see if we can steal him in the 4th or 5th round or so. But now he's going to Oklahoma, so wish him well there. Hopefully he gets used a little bit more to his advantage there. As I mentioned before, Pup Howard, Jameer Grimsley, Tank Hawkins, guys that I thought could have been good for Florida down the road. But again, talking about Jon Sumrall wanting to win now, that's just it's not in the cards. And so they were going to make that move anyway. And last thing I'll say here is you can tell a lot by where the departing players go next. Like you can see Aiden Mizell going to UCLA. Well, UCLA is not a terrible program. It is now in the Big Ten, before the Pac-12, but they haven't ever exactly been a CFP contender. You don't see their name pop up in those CFP ranking reveals every Tuesday night in November. That's a step down, and that kind of tells you something too. Nashawn Montgomery going to Missouri. Same thing. Missouri's not a bad program. It's just not one that expects to be competing for national championships. So kind of reading there and seeing a guy like Sharif Denson too. He goes to Ole Miss. Well, Ole Miss was just in the CFP semifinals, but now they're hemorrhaging momentum and they're going the wrong way in the post-Lane Kiffin days, just because not like it's their fault, just because Kiffin left them in a terrible situation with the way he left. But he commits to basically a post-apocalyptic version of Ole Miss. So you can kind of see where guys go and kind of gauge a little bit about their true value, or at least on the market in college football based on that. And before we move on to the new guys that Florida got, one more that I forgot to even mention because I went through my list of Big Ten, Dijon Johnson. I thought that was a nice retention piece by Florida in the secondary too. I think the upside for him is huge, and there were offers for him among other college football teams that do have some prestige. So not going in any more than that, but that was a nice keep by Florida. All right.
Yeah, we talked about him last show when we talked about the cornerback kid from Iowa State, from Stark originally.
Dantes Williams,
who ended up going to USC. Hey, man, when you retained Dijon Johnson, when you retained Ben Hanks Jr., and you retained Cormani, and who was the fourth that you retained, the fourth corner? I'm drawing a blank right now, man. You can't help me on that?
Late at night.
Who?
It's late at night.
Yeah, it was Cormani, Dijon, Ben Hanks, and Flowers.
Yes, Javari Flowers. That's right.
So when you retain those four corners, you're 4 deep at cornerback, man. You're 4 deep, okay? Yeah. Like I said last show, that Williams kid was a luxury, okay? And he was a luxury coming off a torn ACL. So you got to be careful with that, man. So was that juice worth the squeeze? I think Caldwell's knocking it out of the park, man. I got to tell you, we're going to have a chance to discuss this GM position and what he's doing. But I think he's knocking it out of the park, man, because you got to give him credit for a lot of these decisions, man.
I agree. No, I agree. And I think, as I said on the show where we first talked about him, part of why he was hired was because he was the numbers guy in terms of the dollars and cents guy for Howie Roseman with the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, him and John Lynch of the San Francisco 49ers, for those of you who don't really follow the NFL, those are two of, I would say, the best GMs that I've ever seen in my days following the NFL. I've been a Giants fan since I was born. I mean, turn of the century, 2000, I've had season tickets to the Giants with my dad. I've seen a lot of rises and falls of franchises. I really think those are two of the best. They just plug and place guys into their system. I guess the Chiefs too, although we'll see how well they do without Patrick Mahomes. We'll see how replaceable he is. But those two franchises, the Eagles and the 49ers, just seem to, at least over the last 5-10 years, just plug and play the new guys. Someone gets hurt, someone gets sick or whatever, someone retires, someone has a contract dispute, whatever, next guy up. They'll replace him with someone faster, younger, cheaper, just like that. It's just that easy. And Howie Roseman deserves a lot of credit for that. And also, he needs his financial guy in David Caldwell. So him having that experience, we talked about this before, was humongous for Florida. Now he's here and a part of the operation. So before we move on to the incoming transfers, we'll run through the list of outgoing guys. This is as it stands late at night on Monday, January 12th. The 31 outgoing transfers: Tony Livingston, the tight end; Hayden Craig, the punter, going to LSU; Mac Mulhern, the long snapper, also going to LSU; Jackson Waite, a wide receiver, a walk-on, going to Boston College; Jacoby Jackson. That one actually kind of hurts more. I really like Jacoby Jackson, but he's gone. Trayon Webb leaving Florida for Appalachian State. Evan Noel, the kicker, I believe just seconds ago committed to Houston. Cam Kosman, tight end, going to Boston College. Aaron Gates going from Florida to Kentucky. Chad Gasper, the running back, has transferred out. Don't know where he's going yet. Sharif Denson, the corner, going to Mississippi. Trey Wilson, wide receiver, going to LSU. Noel Portanyagan, the initially from German offensive lineman, going to a place we don't know yet. Nashawn Montgomery, I read the wrong logo at first. Nashawn Montgomery going from Florida to Missouri. Devon Manuel, offensive tackle. Don't know where he's going yet, but he's in the portal. Enoch Wangoy, offensive tackle. Don't know yet where he's going, but he's in the portal. Mekhi Barrow going from Florida to Mississippi. Talked about a second ago. Hayden Hansen, the tight end, going to Oklahoma. Pup Howard, the linebacker, going a step down from Florida to post Alex Golish, South Florida. Jameer Grimsley going from Florida to Mississippi State at corner. Receiver Tank Hawkins going to the other corner of the continent in Washington State. Marcus Maskell, the interior offensive lineman, going from Florida to Georgia State. Teddy Foster joining Pup Howard in making the trip down I-75 to South Florida. The wide receiver, Aiden Mizell, going to UCLA. Safety, Jordan Castell, going from Florida to Kentucky. Safety, Josiah Davis, is in the portal. Don't know where he's going yet. Mike Peterson Jr., the walk-on wide receiver. We don't know where he's going yet. Almost done. Running back, Katie Daniels, going from Florida to Wake Forest. It appears as though DJ Lagway is going to Baylor. We've seen reports that he's committed there. We've seen reports that he's still looking around there. That's quickly deteriorating into a clown show, but we'll see how that ends up. Tavares Brown, the defensive lineman, going from Florida to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And Maurice Tonkara, the wide receiver, going to a place TBD as of now. All right. The main event of this show, we're going to talk about the guys that Florida has added, and there have been a lot of them. As of right now, 19 incoming transfers. Actually, no, 20, because I typed these notes up before we got the corner from UCLA, Kanye Clark. So we don't know a whole lot about him yet because that just happened. I do have notes prepped on the other 19, or most of the other 19 at least. And let's start with the specialists. We'll talk about Alec Clark coming in from Tulane, Patrick Durkin, the kicker, coming in from Tulane. Just real quick, Adrian, what does it say to you that Florida was willing to let Noel, the kicker, walk, and Florida going and getting the guys that Jon Sumrall has familiarity with from Tulane?
Yeah, even though Noel, I guess if that did play out like that, right, that they let Noel walk, even though he was the number one ranked kicker coming out of high school, never kicked, not even once yet in a game. And he's got here a couple of all-conference, all-Americans that he could bring in, okay, that he has seen kick under pressure. Got to go with the guys that you have confidence in, man, especially at that position. So I think that was a no-brainer. I'll go ahead and bring my 2 All-Americans. Thank you very much.
Yep, I don't really disagree with that. I think there's a lot to be said for a guy where you know the mental makeup of, especially a position like kicker. I mean, at the college level, everyone's got the physical abilities to kick. It's completely mental. And when we saw Austin Harden a decade or so ago, the guy could kick 65-yard field goals. He just couldn't kick them accurately. So it is completely mental at this stage of college football. And I'm going to trust that Jon Sumrall brought in a guy that he can trust the mentals of. Of course, we haven't seen him do it in the SEC, but he did play a couple of SEC teams at Ole Miss. Not that those games were close, but nonetheless, I'm fine with that. I wish Noel the best, but I'm fine with that. All right, now let's get to the big time, the transfers that Florida has gotten. We will go we'll go in the order I wrote down notes about them. So we'll go. We'll start with DJ Coleman. We'll give a quick bit of analysis and a quick grade as to the take. We're going to grade the takes of each of these guys. So DJ Coleman, safety from Baylor. What do you like about him? What do you think of the pickup?
Position of need, position that has been needing an upgrade for a couple of years now. I hope he slides right into that safety position opposite Thornton. And I give it a solid B+ just for that, man, because I expect an upgrade there, Neil.
He's a track guy. He's got that in his background. That right away is enticing to me. It says he ran a 22.72 200 and also long jump 19.5 as a junior. So right there tells me, all right, we're getting an upgrade from a physical trait standpoint. And Baylor defense wasn't spectacular, but it didn't look like, at least from the little bit of film I watched, that he did anything particularly egregiously wrong. So I like the take too. If for no other reason than because I like the upside there, I think that he can be developed even just in 1 year here. So I'm going to give it a solid B. All right.
One more thing on that real quick. Aranda plays a complicated defense. So for him to have been in that defense for a couple of years, be the safety who's kind of safety, middle linebacker are usually your two smartest guys on that defense. So for him to have been doing that for a couple of years also bodes well for the young man.
I think that's fair. Okay, let's talk about his teammate, DK Kalu from Baylor. This time going to the defensive line to pick up a 6'4", 309-pound defensive lineman. A little bit of versatility there. Adrian, what do you think of him?
Solid C+. Got good size, provide depth, rotational piece. I think that's what he is. I don't foresee him as being an all-conference type of starter guy, but he's a guy who has size, and you're going to bring into your rotation in the middle of the line.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that, honestly. I mean, look, you never know who's going to come into Florida and just star out of nowhere. There's always that potential. Don't want to knock the kid. I think, if nothing else, he is a good depth piece. Could develop into something special here, but I think, again, he was gotten for depth purposes. So we'll leave it at that. I'll say it's a C+ as well. So moving on to wide receiver Micah Mays, initially from Wake Forest. What do we think of him?
Florida native, right? From West Palm Beach, I believe. Again, Wake Forest.
North Palm Beach, to be exact.
North Palm
the Benjamin
Beach,
School.
Yeah, depth piece also. He's guy for your rotation, provides depth, has had production. Again, these are power 4 players that have played, have produced, have snaps, and you're bringing them in as rotation depth pieces. I got no problem with that. I think it's a good pickup. I give it a solid C+ also.
I think he can be really good at Florida if he gets the chance to. I mean, looking at his high school stats, his high school profile, he's a top 175 guy. I think 173 according to 247 Sports, and then I think he was 160 something according to On3. So consensus top 200 guy, and he chose to go to Wake Forest because he's a smart kid. Obviously, the stats don't blow you away there. Only 18 catches for 302 yards and 2 touchdowns, but I don't see any real negative here. I think that he could be a spectacular playmaker at Florida if given the opportunity. And if nothing else, again, as we just talked about with Kalu, he's a depth piece. It's going to be hard to crack into the rotation when you got guys like Vernell Brown third and Dallas Wilson headlining that group, not to mention some of the other guys we'll talk about in a second that also came to Florida. But that's a solid pickup. I'll give that a B minus. All right, the guy that I guess is going to be replacing DJ Lagway, one of the two contestants for that title, and Aaron Philo, quarterback from Georgia Tech, was mostly a backup, but he did lead a game-winning drive for Georgia Tech at one point in his career. I believe that was against Syracuse or either them or NC State. Now I can't remember. I should have written that down. But yeah, he's done things before in that offense. So coming to Florida, along with Buster Faulkner, obviously he'll have some of his teammates there with him in Harrison Moore and Bailey Stockton. But what do we think of the addition of Philo?
Philo, to me, this is how I see the addition of Philo. I know it's an open quarterback competition, but if Aaron Philo is not your starter day one, then they kind of made a mistake there because you're bringing him in to be your starter. He's got 2 years of experience in the Faulkner system. Faulkner handpicked, recruited this kid out of high school. He's the all-time leading passer in the state of Georgia. Mind you, he played in the lowest division. I get it, but he still completes passes, man. You got to throw some passes and complete passes because even against air, it's tough to lead a state like in Georgia in passing all time, okay? So the guy's got some chops. I don't care what anybody says. He started a game against Gardner-Webb this year. The one game that he did start, he had a very, very good game. Obviously, it was Gardner-Webb. He played as a true freshman. He played a game against Miami. He came in there, threw a touchdown pass against Miami a couple years ago. So he's got some experience. He's been in the system for 2 years now, and handpicked by the offensive coordinator of the year in the nation. To me, if he's not the starter day one, something went a little wrong. That's how I see it. Okay. With all that being said, if you ask me to predict right now, I think he's going to be a 2-year starter, be a stud for the University of Florida.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Trammell Jones. I think that Trammell Jones could be the starter, and it's not a knock on Philo. It's just Trammell Jones wins the job. Sometimes you have situations where guys win the job and where guys lose the job. I mean, look, first of all, the game was against NC State that he won. But second of all, like you said, if he just is an average quarterback, if he just makes 1 or 2 plays a game with his arm or his legs for that matter, not that he's super dynamic, but if he just does an average job, Florida's going to win a lot of games because they have the skill position guys. I think they have the offensive line to win a lot of games. I know like there's no longer a returning All-American in Jake Slaughter or a 5th-year senior in Austin Barber that can make you feel good in the offseason. But something tells me that Florida's not going to be any slouches up front with our Gator great, former Gator offensive lineman, Phil Troutwine, that we brought home. He doesn't put out any weak offensive lines. So maybe that's me being a little wishful after seeing 4 years of just terrible offensive line play for the most part. But I happen to think that they'll block enough for Philo to win games by just doing the Clark Kent type of things as opposed to the Superman type of things. Just make the plays that are there. Don't make mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. And if he can do that consistently enough in practice, he could be a quarterback of a 8-4 easily, if not 9-3, even 10-2 type team. So because of that, because of this familiarity with Faulkner, I give this a B. It's not an A just because he wasn't the starter at Georgia Tech, but it's a good pickup. It's one that I'm not mad about. It's one that could have a lot of upside, again, assuming the rest of the team does their jobs. All right, that is Aaron Philo. TJ Bullard, one we got today, or I guess when y'all are listening to this, we got him yesterday. A legacy, his father, of course, Thaddeus Bullard. So nice there. A linebacker we got from Central Florida. What do we give grade-wise here?
I don't know much about Bullard, I'll be honest with you. So I'm assuming it's a def piece, and any def piece like that comes from a Power 4 school with some snaps under his belt, I'm giving him a solid C+.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play a ton at Central Florida, but The upside, I think, is there too. I think it is a depth piece like you. I don't think it's a bad take because, again, if you're talking about having to get to your second, third, even fourth string linebackers, I think you could do a lot worse than TJ Bullard, at least given what I saw on his high school tape. So I'm fine with it. And I'm also assuming that the guys can play. I'm perfectly fine with bringing in former Gators sons. I'm perfectly fine with that. Again, assuming that they can play at least a competent level, I'm fine with that. So I'll respect the take. I have no problems with it. I think it could pay off. And if nothing else, it's just another body at a position that is good for now, for sure, with Jaden Robinson, Aaron Childs, Miles Graham. But certainly you could use some more bodies at just because, one injury happens and, well, then disaster strikes and you need to go to that well of depth sooner than you thought you'd have to. So I'm fine with it. I'll give it a C+. Lakota Dupre doing the inverse Billy Napier move, coming from James Madison to Florida, a tight ends to replace Hayden Hansen, not having to replace Amir Jackson, which we initially thought would have to be the case. But now that we know Amir Jackson is going to be back at Florida, how do we grade this take?
Yeah, I saw some of his tape, and his athleticism is through the roof. For a tight end, he's one heck of an athlete. It's got to work his blocking, okay, obviously. But as far as a pass-catching tight end, I like the take, man. I give it a solid B.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what he did against Oregon in the playoff. I love the take. I think the upside is huge. I think that Dupre can be the tight end that Billy Napier was trying to shoehorn Hayden Hansen into being last year, but just couldn't because you can't shove a square peg into a round hole. But I think he'll fit that role. Like you said, pass-catching tight end, love it. I love the idea of him complimenting Amir Jackson there. I'll give it a solid B+. All right. I apologize if I say this name incorrectly. I'm still learning. Emmanuel Oyebadejo from Jacksonville State coming over to Florida on the defensive line. What do we think of this one?
Yeah, I think that's I give it an A, man. I think that was a big pickup. The coaching staff loves that guy, dude. They made him a priority. He goes to Texas A&M and pretty much commits to us while he's almost on Texas A&M's campus. It looked like after he had visited us. Huge kid. What is it, 6'7", 3+? That's his size, right? I mean, just a monster-sized kid. I think he could be a terror on that defensive line, man. Big get.
Originally from Manchester, England.
Yeah, I love Manchester.
And I know, I'm just going to get it out of the way. I know that somewhere out there's someone in Gen Alpha who hears those two numbers together that I'm not going to repeat and going to move their arms up and down. So I'm just going to get that out of the way. Elephant in the room. I know, 6'7". I got it. This is a nice pickup. There were some real players out there for him. Like you said, Texas A&M. There were some schools that I don't even think their names got into the public fray that I know for a fact were going after him. I think that this was a case of Florida going out and establishing contact with him early in the process, not even waiting for him to hit the portal, because who is doing that these days? So Florida made sure that he knew that he was a priority. They got him in the text chain early. They held on to him throughout the process. Whether or not he committed on the first day Florida texted with him didn't really matter. Jon Sumrall just wanted to put a priority on that relationship. He did that. He got him into the fray. Like you said, Texas A&M was a big player in this as well. I'm very happy with this take. That's a major league pull for Florida. I'll say that's an A-. I think that he could be a very, very important piece to any success Florida's got this coming year. Just to note, he had 41 tackles, 6.5 for loss last year, 4.5 sacks, batted down 5 passes, forced 2 fumbles a year ago. So, second team All-Conference USA. He, I think PFF had him as Jacksonville State's top defensive player throughout the whole year. So great pickup for Florida, A- there. All right, Evan Pryor, formerly of the Cincinnati Bearcats, formerly of the Ohio State Buckeyes. What do we make of this take?
Yeah, home run hitter, speedster, like a 7.2 yards per rush average last year. I think like out of his like 5 or 6 touchdowns, like 4 or 5 of them were 30+ yards. So he's a home run threat. Okay, to go along with Jaden Bogg, obviously, man, thunder and lightning right there. Talk about, Bogg, soften him up, and then you come in with Pryor, man, just to bust it through there, to pop a long one. So I love the pickup. I give it a B plus, man, if not A minus.
I'll give it an A- because he's another veteran of college football. Played 4 years of college ball, 2 years at Ohio State, had 40 carries in those 2 years, so not a featured part, but still was good enough to tote the ball for Ohio State. Goes to Cincinnati. Wouldn't necessarily say he breaks out there, but he did have 400+ yards in each of those 2 seasons in 24 and 25. So 1,087 yards combined across 4 years of college ball, 10 touchdowns. I think, like you said, this is a great thunder and lightning case here. Big guy to pulverize the defense, and then the guy who can just sprint past everyone comes in to finish off the game. I'm very happy with this take. I think that, again, as was the case with the previous guy we talked about, whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce again, Pryor was in high demand. There were some big-time players after him. Maybe not quite as much as – I'm just not even going to – Oyebadejo. I don't think it was quite as much as in demand as him, but there were some big-time players after him as well. Florida wins that battle. So nice job for Florida. I'll say A- there. Bailey Stockton comes over from Georgia Tech, former teammates with Harrison Moore, who we'll talk about in a moment later, and with Aaron Philo in Atlanta. Florida now has all those guys on the roster. What do we think of this pickup?
Rotational depth piece from Georgia Tech, knows the offense. Like I said, knows Faulkner's offense, has been in it for the last 2 years, will help teach your other guys the offense. So I like the pick. Slot receiver, kind of like quote unquote possession type of receiver. I like the pick. I'll give it a solid B.
Yeah, I'll give it a B+. I'll go a little even more positive than that. I think there's something to be said about back-to-back years of 200+ receiving yards. Not that, and for a non-home run hitting guy, like you talked about, possession guy, but for a guy who's clearly going to sit behind Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown in the pecking order for targets, this is a piece that you can use as a security blanket, as a Van Jefferson type, and there are differences between those, but it's a possession receiver. There's a security blanket there. He's a safety valve, if nothing else. Like you said, he knows the offense. I'm perfectly happy with this take as well.
He's also Philo's high school teammate.
That too. Yeah, that's right. That's right. He is from Bogart, I believe.
So they got a connection. They got a connection there.
Yeah, so that's that. Now we got a couple of former guys who played for Phil Troutwine. From former teammates in Georgia, we go to former teammates, or Georgia Tech, we got former teammates from Penn State. We got a couple of offensive linemen, the first of which, TJ Shanahan, 6'4", 316, had some good demand for him as well. In the transfer portal, what do we think of this pickup?
I remember him during the recruiting process. I believe he was out of Clearwater, but he also had some Texas in his background. He lived in Texas, but he was in high school out of Clearwater. Florida recruited him heavily.
Westlake for high school.
Yeah, Florida recruited him heavily, and he ended up going to Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. And then he transferred to Penn State. Again, been in Troutwine's system. Okay, been coached by Troutwine. So if Phil Troutwine wants you to come with him to Florida, man, I'm all for that. I think he's, if not a favorite, a pretty good chance of starting in that interior line for Florida next year. I give it a solid B, B+.
If you were in all kinds of weather enough of a Gator fan to brave the torrential downpour against Texas A&M 2 years ago, you might remember him because after there was a pick six that Graham Mertz threw to make that game 33-7. Right after that, a Texas A&M offensive lineman runs onto the field and starts pointing at the fans one section at a time, like you chomp chomp, next section you chomp chomp. That was TJ Shanahan. So if you remember that, if you were in the stadium and you braved the elements long enough to see that, that was him. So now he's going to be doing the Gator chomp for good reasons as opposed to sarcastic mocking reasons. Aside from that ridiculously esoteric fact, I think there's something to be said for the fact that he was able to start for two certainly top 25 prestige programs in college football. I mean, he wasn't on either roster in the year that they made the playoff, but Texas A&M, Penn State have both made the CFP within the last 2 seasons. They've, I think, fair to say, have been respectable in the other years. Mike Elko's first year kind of fizzled out there, but and Penn State obviously this year kind of fell apart, but they're respectable programs. That says something to me. And it wasn't his fault that the seasons went to complete garbage. So, I mean, there were a lot of problems in Penn State beyond the offensive line. So I'm perfectly fine with the take. He's been through the wars of the SEC before. He's been through the grind of the Big Ten before. The Big Ten, I think, has overtaken the SEC. At least it appears right now in terms of conference superiority. So he's played big-time ball before. I'm fine with the take. I think that his size gives me reason to believe that with the right strength and conditioning program, which we've talked about, we now have a literal special forces workout planner in charge of our SNC now. I think we can rest easy knowing that that's in good hands. I'm fine with it. I think this is a solid B+ pickup for Florida. Okay, so that is him. Now we'll go to his teammate, Egan Boyer from Penn State on the offensive line as well. He was on the left side, I believe, as a tackle. So what do we think of this pickup?
Well, this is what I think about Boyer. Trotwine has put about 4 or 5 dudes in the NFL. One of them starts from my Jets, okay, first-round draft pick. He's got about a couple of those, Trotwine does. This kid, I believe, was a redshirt freshman this year. Started a little bit, started in that Clemson game, if I remember correctly. Supposedly had a bad game against Clemson. Clemson's got a pretty good defense. He's a young player. Trotwine's personally recruited him. He's developing him. And if he wants him again, man, like I said, I think Phil Trotwine's one of the top 5 offensive line coaches in the nation. And I'm going to trust these guys until proven otherwise. So if he wants to bring them in and compete for one of them tackle spots, I'm all good with it. I give it a solid B.
This is one of 2 guys I'm gonna say what I'm about to say for, and that's I trust Phil Trautwein with it because he wasn't. He got some playing time in the bowl game for Penn State, but he did, at least in terms of pure game film, he left a good bit to be desired last year. He's also a freshman. So, okay, whatever. Freshmen often have growing pains they have to go through. This is one where I'm going to say, that the tape isn't fantastic, but cool. I'm going to trust Phil Trautwein on this one. Trautwein recruits guys that he believes he can put in the NFL for a reason. I'm going to let this ride out. So I'm fine with it. I'll say this is a B. I'll say it's a B-, if only because it wasn't like he played a ton as a freshman and struggled consistently. He didn't really crack their lineup a ton, but when he did, he left a lot to be desired. So there's more of a learning curve to go here. So I'll say it's a B-, but that's a perfectly acceptable grade for this. So we'll go on to London Montgomery from East Carolina, another running back Florida gets in the transfer portal after, of course, getting Evan Pryor from Cincinnati and also keeping Jaden Baugh. What do we think of the pickup of Montgomery?
Man, so listen, so you kept Baugh, obviously. Duke Charles is coming back, right? Duke Clark is coming back. So London Montgomery, have you watched his tape from East Carolina? Man, he looks pretty good, bro. He looks pretty good. This just knocked it out for me as far as this is a top 5 running back room in the nation next year. I mean, period. This is top 5, easy. Okay, and it improved from last year, big time. Adding Pryor and Montgomery compared to what you had last year, keeping Bogg and keeping Duke Clark. I mean, you improved your running back room tenfold, and you have a top 5 running back room in the nation. to get this guy, knowing Bog was here, knowing Pryor was here, man, there's a A- get. A-, close to A, because his film looked really damn good. He was the starter for ECU. He's got some good numbers.
Yeah, you would talk about his numbers: 156 carries, 742 yards, 7 touchdowns. That tells me, if nothing else, I know ECU is a step down from Florida, but if nothing else, this is a depth piece. Potentially could be another lightning strike. Right? You're talking about thunder and lightning with Evan Pryor and Jade Watt. He could be another bolt of lightning to come crashing down on a defense. So I'm very happy that Florida goes and gets not one but 2 solid running backs that can just sprint past everyone. He's not like Jeff Demps level fast, but he can move. So Florida got him exactly for that purpose. I will say this is an A- as well. All right, moving on up through the list. We will go to Emeka Ugorji, the offensive tackle from Stanford. There is a caveat with what I'm going to say here. He was ranked as the 551st out of 554 offensive tackles in college football a year ago, but there is a big caveat to that. I'll get to it in a second. Go ahead, Adrian. I'll let you go first.
Just based on that ranking, he was the worst offensive tackle in college football last year, right? That's what that tells you. So right off the bat, you're like, well, why are they getting this guy? So there has to be a reason. Hopefully you could touch base on that, and I will go ahead and defer that to you. But again, as far as I'm concerned, this is a Phil Trot wine. I mean, he's watched his film. He's brought him in. If he likes him, I'm good with him. You can never have enough offensive tackles, obviously. So let's bring him in here and see what he got. Start coaching him up, develop him. He's got good size, that's for sure. So what you got?
Yeah, well, what I got is that he played at Stanford. For lack of a better way to put this, he played for the Stanford Cardinal. I think there was a very good reason why there were better offers than Stanford out there for him out of high school. And Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Baylor, Arizona State, which was in the playoff a year ago. So there were SMU, which is also in the playoff a year ago. So none of the huge ones, right? Like none of the Floridas or Alabamas or Georgias were offering him. But what I see here on his offer list, also Vanderbilt, Pennsylvania, as in the Penn Quakers, California, and then of course the Duke, school he goes to now, or the school he went to, Stanford. What do those schools all have in common, Adrian?
Smart kids go there.
So he just needs time to learn. I mean, he's got the physical frame. He's 300 pounds, 6'5". Putting aside just like the low-hanging fruit, Stanford sucks. I mean, they do. I'm sorry. It's just going to put it out there and not mince words because we're already more than an hour into the show. Stanford's not a good football program, right? So they have other problems that I think with that PFF grade kind of lends to a little bit more margin for error. I guess people, especially when it's like 10:30 at night when the games start there, and the people watching it are probably seeing that the play goes nowhere, and there may be a little more loosey-goosey with their grades. Like PFF's not perfect, but it is a good gauge for how things go. But the way they grade players, like taking away a half a point or adding a half a point for a good play, but then adding a full point or a point and a half or even 2 points for a really good, great, or exceptional play, I think that can be kind of subjective. So that's the caveat there. The other caveat, of course, is he's a very smart kid. And if you go to the NFL Draft Combine and you start going through, I think they still use the Wonderlic tests to test intelligence. You may not expect this because they're the guys who are just clashing bodies, but typically those guys on the offensive line are the ones that score the highest because they have to know all the protections. They have to have it not only memorized, but be willing and able to have a game plan in place. Like, all right, I'm going to pull. I got this guy 3 gaps over. I'm going to attack, right? Oh, there's an audible. Oh, I got to do this and that. And I have to be able to switch that in the snap of a finger and then execute this new call, this new protection that's just been barked out in the snap of a finger. Again, it's not that easy to do. So me seeing all those high school offers from all those smart schools gives me a lot of reason to believe that that was the reason why Phil Troutwine wanted him so bad. So again, there's a raw number, not fantastic, but again, and he's a freshman, by the way. He also worth pointing out, he's got 3 years left to mature and develop. So I like the take. I saw that number too. I'm not ignoring it, but I think this is a C+ pickup with the potential to develop into a B+ or an A- pickup as time goes on. All right, That is him. Let us now go up the list to the very top of the rankings of the guys that Florida got. Harrison Moore from Georgia Tech, the starting center for the Yellow Jackets a year ago. Adrian, what have you got?
Yeah, I got that as an A, man. This guy was the starting center for Georgia Tech, been in Faulkner's system. Another guy for 2+ years is going to teach the rest of your offensive linemen, help them pick up the intricacies of Faulkner's offense. And then I read where 600, 700 something snaps, never allowed a sack, has 0 sacks allowed. So bam, boom, A+, A, whatever you want. I think he's going to be one of the starters. Whoever doesn't start there for center, because I think Sandamela is going to be a good one now. Oh, okay.
Another guy we got back. We forgot to mention him in the retention segment.
Sandamela, man. So if Sandamela doesn't win out the center spot outright, I think this guy might slide over. Listen, I'm loving the depth on our line, okay? With all the guys that we brought back, the guys we've added in the portal, man, Troutwine's going to find his 5. He's going to find his 5 he's happy with, and we'll probably go 8, 9, 10 deep that I think Troutwine's going to be happy with, man. I like our offensive line. I think we're going to be fine, Neil. I think we're going to be fine there.
The guy that the Sunshine Pumpers and the Disney Gators like to call Negative Neil is going to give an A+ grade. How about that? I love this pickup. Even if you forget the familiarity with Buster Faulkner's offense, which we just talked about again, the mental side of being an offensive lineman. You got to know the protections, got to know and be able to switch your focus and your game plan and your mind, and then be able to go and enact violence on someone, right? And go and just do violent things to another human being and change your game plan and then execute that all within a matter of 5 seconds or less. That's just, there's so much there that you have to be able to do at such a high level. And then he doesn't allow a sack a whole year, just like you said. So even if you throw out the familiarity with Buster Faulkner's offense, you start an entire season of college football, maybe not in the SEC, but I mean, Georgia Tech played Georgia. They played some good teams. They played Miami last year.
Yeah.
So
ACC
give them credit for that. So A+, that's a spectacular pickup for Florida. Maybe not such a high degree of difficulty because of that relationship. Also, again, with Aaron Philo and Bailey Stockton, but still very happy with that pickup. 3 more to get to. Cam Dooley, safety coming over from Kentucky, a straight-up swap with the Kentucky Wildcats for Jordan Castell. I think Florida won that trade. What do you think, Adrian?
I think the word fleecing comes to mind, and no disrespect to Mr. Castell. I wish him the best. We talked about him in our pre-show this year. You know, when we had Allie and Chris Phillips from SECU on. You know, we mentioned Castell, that he had to step up this year. He had to make all those snaps worth something. All those snaps he's taken since freshman year. And man, I got to tell you, freshman year was his shining moment. That's it. He never built off of that. In fact, he got worse. So this is a massive get. I gave this one an A, borderline A+. He brings in the familiarity with that's not that word. Familiarity. With defensive coordinator White's system. So he's going to be able to, again, help the other players grasp that system, the other DBs. He's either looking at the nickel position or be the third safety, rotating with the other 2 guys, Thornton and the kid from Baylor. So I love this pickup. He also has multiple years of eligibility left, so I give it a solid A.
You get a pass for having word retrieval issues because English is not your first language, which I I don't know. It's a respect thing. Like, it's not the language you grew up speaking all that much. So hey, like you speak 2 languages fluently, you get a pass for occasionally forgetting a word or 2. So you got nothing to worry about with that.
It's a tongue twister.
It is for familiarity. Yeah, it is. It is kind of. I'll give you that. Yeah, I mean, you talk about Jordan Castell. I mean, he gets a first class spot in the Kyle Jackson, Brett Nelson, JJ Schwartz peaked as a freshman Hall of Fame at the University of Florida, and it's sad. It's really sad because I had high hopes for that guy. Like you said, you thought this was the year he had to step up, and he just didn't do it. And it's nothing personal against him. The kid gets up at 5 a.m, just like everyone else on his team, and does the same workouts and pushes his body to the point of exhaustion. I respect it. The results just weren't there. So he goes to Kentucky, and Florida takes their safety away and returning Cam Dooley. And on the note of Cam Dooley, this was one of the highest rated safeties, I think, in the entire transfer portal. He was in high demand among other top tier schools. Florida goes and gets him away from all of them. I mean, this is another A. I think that this is a fantastic pickup for Florida. I also don't know exactly how fair it is to sing the praises too much of anyone who was on a team that was, as bad as Kentucky was last year. But the obvious caveat to that is, well, it wasn't their defense that was sucking it up. It was their offense that was so bad. Of course, that offense also made our defense look like a Pop Warner team, but that's neither here nor there. Don't be fooled by the 4-8 record beside Kentucky's name last year. Just the same way that LSU should not be fooled by the 4-8 record beside our name when they talk about Trey Wilson. His issue is being healthy, not that he played on a 4-8 team. So great pickup, solid A, very happy with that. 2 more to get to. Luke Harpring, another techie that Florida gets, this one at the tight end position. Adrian, what do you think of Mr. Harpring?
Hey, good genes, right? His dad, Matt Harpring, was a basketball player there at Georgia Tech. So he took a legacy from Georgia Tech. They must not be too happy. Ever since we took Faulkner, I had been following a couple of Georgia Tech accounts, a couple guys that do podcasts and stuff like that. And they like this kid. They really liked this kid, Harpring. So they were bummed to see him go. Not happy about it at all. So, another nice pass-catching tight end. Improves our tight end room from last year, in my opinion. I think you've improved that room. And again, he's been in Faulkner's system the last 2 seasons. So he brings that familiarity to the table, which I'm very pleased with. I like this pickup, man. I like our tight end room. I think they've improved on it.
Yeah, I mean, Lakota Dupre, Amir Jackson, Luke Harpring. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to get 3 tight ends that are of above average quality or caliber on the same roster, and Florida has done that pretty clearly. I mean, to me, it's another A. It's another A because, again, I think he can take the next step forward, and the stats don't really blow you away from a year ago. 13 catches, 158 yards. But I think, again, it goes back to what he can be developed into in the Buster Faulkner offense at Florida with more Florida talent there around him. I think, again, there's the case of, well, Amir Jackson's going to be the starter. Lakota Dupre is really athletic. How many targets is this guy really going to get if especially we do what you and I have both been advocating for the last couple of years, which is make the wide receivers the featured part of the passing offense. But I have a feeling that when his name is called, he will be ready to step up. So I'm very happy with this. It's another A for me. All right. Last but not least, to me, this is the big one. Like the biggest one of all. Eric Singleton coming from Auburn. Now, the smoke and the buzz around Auburn when the coach Hugh Freeze was fired, of course, is around Cam Coleman. He was the 5-star signee. He was the one that everyone wanted, including Alabama and Georgia and Texas and all those other big-name schools. So Cam Coleman got a lot of the buzz, but now Florida got a guy that can really play football. So I'll stop there and I won't take any more of your talking points. But go ahead. Think of Singleton.
This was the one, just like you said, man. I went to go visit my daughter at Tampa this weekend in Tampa Bay, and I accompanied her to Crunch Fitness, right? She had to go do this class. So I was on the treadmill when this news broke, and I almost fell off the treadmill. No joke. I had to stop the treadmill and reread my phone because this was the one that got me excited. Yeah, the retentions, the 5 guys coming back that we've talked about, that was exciting. But this one got me pumped up for just so many reasons, right? This is something that Billy Napier would have never, ever would we have been in play, for something like that. Now, mind you, he did bring in the portal, a guy like Ricky Pearsall and Streamer
Jackson.
DK, but they weren't the hyped player that Singleton is. Okay, this guy comes with some major props here, man. Again, he played in Faulkner's system. Faulkner's first year at Georgia Tech, put up monster numbers. Went to Auburn. Okay, he got bit with the Hugh Freeze and the Jackson Arnold
Ashton Daniels.
Oh my God, just awful. Yeah, Ashton Daniels, Florida State's future quarterback. Oh my Lord. So, both him and Coleman just criminally underused, used poorly. So here you come, man. Now Singleton comes here to top 5 wide receiver room in the nation. That's what you have here. You have a top 5 wide receiver room in the nation. Slam dunk. Is he your number 1? I mean, is he probably your number 1? Arguments can be made. Okay, Dallas. Yeah. We all love Dallas, but he had just that one real good game because of injuries, unfortunately. And VB3, still a freshman. Okay, we'll be going into his sophomore year. This guy is a senior. I mean, he's a 4-year guy, been in college, a lot of reps, a lot of experience, explosiveness. Just, man, I'm telling you, this one was exciting, man. This one was exciting.
So this pickup answers a question for me as to how he was sold on Florida. There's no way in my mind that he commits to Florida if he is not sold on the idea that either Aaron Philo or Trammell Jones can hit him going deep. Like, he's got to step on his defender. He's running a straight 9 route, or maybe it's a really deep post route, and there's a step of separation, not 20, but there's a step, and there's a slightly below average for an SEC college football game window for a quarterback to fit it into. There's no way he comes to Florida, in my mind, if he was not sold on the idea that one of those 2 quarterbacks could hit him in that window. That's what tells me that this is operating like a serious program. Because either Florida staff is operating at an insanely high level of just lying and just making stuff up, or they have reason to believe what they're saying. And what they're saying, of course, is you're going to be featured, in the case of Eric Singleton, you're going to be featured in an offense that's going to light up the scoreboard. And Jon Sumrall was not BSing in his introductory press conference when he said, among other things, having an explosive offense at Florida is not a luxury, it's mandatory, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Or maybe he said that after the fact, but he said that within his first few days in Gainesville.
Yeah, so he did say that.
That's, again, this all goes back to put a bow on this show. We'll talk basketball in a second, really briefly, but to put a bow on the football part of the show, that's the kind of thing that tells me this is a serious operation right now. Florida may still lose games next year. For all we know, I mean, I hope this is not the case, but for all we know, this guy, Buster Faulkner, Brad White, could be terrible in-game coordinators at Florida. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it could happen, right? We don't have that data to say that's not true. We do at this point have data that, at least in the offseason, this program is operating like a one that wants to compete for championships. Never got that sense under Billy Napier. They would do, like, the Billy Napier regime would do just enough in the offseason to keep the fans from rioting, basically. Like, they would get Dallas Wilson. Not initially. They lost him to Oregon at first, but they did go get him, right? They got Vernell Brown. They got DJ Lagway, the 5-star quarterback, who, say what you want about him, but there was a ton of hype there. Chose Florida over tons of other top schools. So there, and Miles Graham, obviously he was a legacy, but maybe a guy like Cormani McLean, for example, lost him initially, went the weird route, went to commit to Miami, then went to Colorado, and then came to Florida. Well, but Florida got him, so fans were happy in the end. Florida did just enough to keep fans from losing their minds under Napier in the offseason, right? They would lose. There'd be the dumbest things happening. They lost their strength and conditioning coach, Craig Fitzgerald, to freaking Boston College after 4 weeks, right? That's not something a serious program does. There's the hemorrhaging of your talent to other schools, not the least of which was a running back to a rival in Georgia. And the fans would be at their breaking point when something at the last second would go right, and it would be just strong enough to offset their feelings of absolute rage. That's how the Napier tenure played out in the offseason. This tenure at Florida, well, there are some misses. John Williams, like you said, a luxury. Would have been great if Florida got him. Cam Coleman going to Texas. Jamie French, another wide receiver. Florida's got great receivers here. Could it have been a better receiving room? Yeah, it could have been if Florida was willing to spend obscene amounts of money on a Cam Coleman or Jamie French, but it's not really needed. Those are things that you have to look to nitpick. A guy like Eric Fletcher, cornerback from Oklahoma State, you talked about having the 4 big corners in this room. Well, Eric Fletcher would have been great at Florida. Would have been a great pickup, but you didn't really need to have him. This administration, this staff is doing all the things it needs to do to be a serious championship contending program. And the things that are going wrong, you have to go out of your way to find fault with. That is a major distinction from the last regime. That's where we'll leave it here, unless you have any other thoughts, and then we can go on to basketball.
No, man, I'm good. The only thing is that during the Billy Napier era, if we were to do this segment, we would have been done like in 15 minutes, because that's how he treated the portal. Yeah, that's how he treated the portal, man. Just a couple, 2 or 3 guys. And another thing, if you notice, we mentioned depth pieces a lot. Depth piece, a rotational piece. You know what that tells you, though? That tells you that this team's bringing back a lot of talent. And that tells you that this team had talent last year. All right? You had starters, and you have starters coming back, okay? And in the places that they needed to get starting caliber players, they've done that. I think that they could get maybe one more offensive tackle and one more defensive tackle that's starting quality, and I'll be ecstatic if they could do that. If they could do that, and Philo could be just average, man, this is. I mean, I hate to sound dumb, man, it's stupid. This is a playoff team, man. I mean, come on. You got top 5 running back room and wide receiver room here. We'll get to those predictions later, but I think they've done a bang-up job, man. Bang-up job.
It's the 2020s now. You can flip a roster overnight. You can do it at Indiana. Well, then you sure as hell can do it at Florida. So obviously Curt Cignetti is different than Jon Sumrall, but the fact remains this is an era of college football where the right coach with the right bits of support behind him can flip things around that quickly. There's no more 4-year plans.
And before you move on, you can't stress it enough, man. Probably the biggest get is having Faulkner be your play caller.
Yeah.
That's the biggest get right there. Forget Bog, forget Dallas Wilson, forget VB3, all respect to them. Your biggest get is your freaking play caller.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really argue with that. There's certainly a cause and effect relationship there between that and the starting center from another Power 4 conference or team that you got in Harrison Moore. Also a quarterback who knows the system, right? There's some cause and effect there as well. I really, again, any negative that you want to throw at this offseason so far, as young as it is for Florida, any negative that you want to toss in any coach's direction, you have to go out of your way to nitpick, to talk about. That's where I'll leave it. And again, that's a huge departure from what things were like under the Napier tenure, where the negatives were a lot more prevalent and a lot more damaging, and they hurt. They were painful to go through. Whereas here, it's just like, yeah, but Okay, cool. But who cares that much? Look at what else good happened. And it's not a stretch or sunshine pumping to do so. It's just the objective reality. All right, basketball. Florida is looking a lot better now. At least the Gator Nation feels a lot better now about the basketball program than they did a week or so ago. The loss to Missouri was, I think, annoying more than it was damaging, but Florida goes and plays terribly in Columbia, Missouri, and yet they still have the ball with a chance to win the game. Then, of course, the Gators come back to the friendly confines of the O-Dome, and they blow out not one but two ranked rivals in Georgia and Tennessee. Of course, Georgia experiencing their stray upstring in the mid-major Mike cycle, and Tennessee under Rick Barnes has been a pretty consistent Sweet 16 Elite 8 program over the past several years. So regardless of how you want to view the individual teams, those are two wins that make Gator fans feel better. My question is, does this stretch, does the week at home make Florida's guards feel better? Because we saw Boogie Flynn shoot the ball and it go in a lot more. Does that ignite the fire for him to really get hot and play like the Boogie Flynn that we thought we were getting, and then ditto that for Xavier Lee? What do you think?
Well, that's the $1 trillion question, right? Especially for Boogie. He got his hair cut like the reverse Samson there, right? He cut his hair. And
the Walter Clayton special.
You betcha. Yeah, the same barber and everything I saw today. So that's a good sign. Hopefully Lee goes ahead and shaves his head too, kind of like mine. Just come over to my house, man, Xavier. I'll take care of you, bro. But listen, the proverbial basketball is in Boogie's court, okay? It's up to him now to repeat what he did, all right? And if he plays like that, Florida's a Final Four team. Probably one of your favorites to win the national championship, okay? Along with Arizona, along with UConn. A lot of good teams out there this year. A lot of good teams. So it's basically, I hate to put it on you, Boogie, but it's basically up to you, kid. It all depends on if you could play, not even to the level you played against Tennessee, because that was just like Walter Clayton-esque, man. He was just on fire. So that's probably going to be one of his best games all year. But if he could play even 80% of what he played there against Tennessee, if he could just bring it up to that level and be consistent there, this team, the sky's the limit. The roof. What was that Michael Jordan phrase that he said? The ceiling is the roof.
Yeah.
Right? The ceiling is the roof, man, because it all comes down to that, dude. It all comes down to that. There's a couple of things I still don't like. This team is not as deep in the front court as they were last year, right? Because Tommy Hawk now is starting, okay, as your wing. You never developed any backups there, okay? Unfortunately, Ingram never developed in the quote-unquote preseason before the SEC schedule starts. He never developed where he got Golden's trust there to spell Hulk there. So your depth in that front court is not as deep. Micah could be doing a little bit better, all right? Micah's coming in. He's giving you some minutes. But they are going to ride Shinyalu. They're going to ride Hulk. And they're going to ride Condon until the wheels come off, all right? That's how I see it. But they need some support from one of those guards. And it only has to be one of either Boogie or Lee. Because I think Urban, whose minutes came up, Neil, remember I mentioned that last episode, he actually had more minutes this game than Xavier Lee, okay? So I think that was the adjustment right there that Todd Golden made. He was going to play Urban more, give him some of the minutes of Boogie and Lee, because at least he could trust him to at least hit, his 35% from three, which is vastly more than what you were getting from Boogie and from Savion. But all you need is from one of those two to step up like this, and you might have something, man. Now we'll see. Now they're going on the road. They're going on the road to Oklahoma, and then they're going on the road to Vandy, who's undefeated. And Vandy's got a damn good team this year, all right? So now we'll see if they could carry this on the road and build on especially that Tennessee game. That was just, it's always a beautiful thing, Neil, right? when you put the belt to AS to Tennessee, that's always nice, man. Kind of like Michael Irvin on the sidelines. He's a maniac, dude.
Except without the drugs in our system to fuel it.
Without the cocaine, no doubt, no doubt.
No, I mean, there are a couple things that probably should be pointed out before we wrap the show up while we're talking about basketball. Number one, Florida actually has not won a road game all year. And in fact, they've lost another couple of pseudo road games that were technically neutral games, but like Arizona and Vegas, that's a road game. Connecticut in Madison Square Garden, that's a road game. Let's be intellectually honest here. Those are true away games. But Florida lost to 3 teams that could easily be 1 seeds: Arizona, Connecticut, and Duke. So those losses don't really bother me. TCU is a bad loss. That was the only one. Yeah, that's a bad loss. Florida should not have lost that. It's not a terrible loss. It's only, it's quad 2. It's not like it's quad 4, but that's for a team that shoots that strives to be as good as Florida strives to be. That's a bad loss. There's nothing else on this resume that tells me that they're not capable of being a Final Four team. Even going on the road to Cameron and being in control of that game in the final seconds until Isaiah Evans hits a 3 in the final seconds. Going on the road to UConn, again, intellectual honesty here, going on the road to UConn and going on the road to Arizona and being in those games until the final seconds tells me, again, starting from there with all this time and room to improve, Florida should be a team you better think twice before picking them to lose in March Madness. I mean, and we talked about it. It's going to be the ball is in Boogie's court. We know what the front court can do. Ruben Chinilu has clearly taken a step forward from a year ago to now. Alex Condon seems like the Alex Condon we got pre-injury against Mississippi State a year ago, minus his 3-point shooting. But then again, it's not really supposed to be what he does as the 4 on a team. If you can hit threes, fantastic. Not your primary objective. So between those 2 guys and then Thomas Houck being a real he looks like an All-American. He has a real case to be a first-team All-American this year. Now, there's going to be competition for it, but he has an argument, a legitimate argument, not just a homer-based argument, to be a first-team All-American this year. And then, of course, Florida showing what they can do in the confines of the O-Dome, taking, as you say, BTA. They go and they smack Georgia and they smack Tennessee. Games are, kind of tight for a couple of media timeouts, but then as the games progress, I should say, Florida goes and just smacks the hell out of both of them down the stretch. I asked you about the backcourt to start just because I think we agree on the front court. It's one of the best in the country, if it's not the best in the country. And the offensive rebounding ability for Florida is going to be what keeps them in games, even if Boogie does regress back to his November form and Xavier Lee regresses back to his November form. And even if Urban Klobjar doesn't step up and pick up some of the slack. But that said, I think I did feel a little bit better about this team a year ago than I do now about this year's team, but only by a little bit. I mean, none of us saw a national championship coming in early mid-January of 2025. I think it was only after they go to the jungle and beat Auburn that we kind of started feeling it a little bit. But, I mean, for the most part, the teams give off a fairly similar vibe in terms of what their ceilings are. I don't think this team has any major weaknesses. They've got questions for sure with Boogie and Xavier and Lee. They've got questions, absolutely. And then there's a conversation of should Urban Klobjar start? Is he really that bad defensively? We talked about it, I think, you weren't here, but Chris and I talked about it a year ago. Well, how bad is Urban Klobjar on defense in practice if he's not shooting the ball at a 35% clip from 3? Like, how can you not play him if he's this dead-eye when he steps onto the floor? Then come to find out Walter Clayton becomes a legit All-American, and then, Elijah Martin and Will Richard are now thriving in the NBA. But we thought that there was a lot of potential there. And now looking at this team, I mean, is he going to be Walter Clayton? No, no one is. That's not realistic. But between him and Boogie and Xavier, I think there is enough to say, all right, this team could potentially mold itself into a championship contender.
Yeah. When it comes to Urban, I heard Mark Wise, who's Mary Weiss's husband, he does ESPN games and stuff like that. He's on radio quite often here, and he had a real good explanation for Urban. He thinks that keeping him on the bench is the way to go because you always want to have somebody on the bench, right? That you could point to and say, yo, go in there and get me some baskets, man.
With fresh legs.
Yeah, with some fresh legs. Go in there and get hot. Kind of like old school Detroit Pistons. They had Vinnie Johnson. They used to call him the microwave. He was the sixth man. Yeah, the bad boys. Vinnie Johnson, the microwave, would come into the game, and he was hot. Right off the bat, boom, boom, drop some jumpers, man. So that's what you get with Urban. Makes a lot of sense to me. So I don't see a switch there. I think that they'll keep that the same there, if for nothing else, because that makes a lot of sense to me, But yeah, if you could get something from Boogie or from Xavion, man. Xavion, sometimes he just gets a little crazy. He plays real fast, and then sometimes he just gets a little bit out of control. He needs to dial that down a little bit. But I'm really, really curious, to see how they bounce back. Well, not even bounce back, but how they respond from this weekend tomorrow. That Oklahoma game is going to be telling.
How they continue the momentum that they built at home. Can you go into a building that's not owned by the University of Florida and win a game, or that's located in Jacksonville? I guess in the case of Miami, but that's a good win now. By the way, that Miami game that we just thought was like a stray one-off. It's fun to go upside down with the U and whatnot. That's actually a really good resume point.
Might end up being I had a look. It's funny that you mentioned that, man. Because I saw that they were ranked, right? And I'm like, dude, let me go have a look at them again. And I looked at this. They've only lost 2 games. Yeah, one to Florida, and I think they lost one to Ole Miss. I think maybe
they lost to BYU and us.
BYU's
a top 10 team in the country.
Yeah, the rest of their schedule, Neil, really manageable. I think that's going to end up being a quad 1 win, man. I think that's going to end up being a quad 1, and you never would have thought that. Never would have thought that.
No, Jai Lucas has done a fantastic job there. I think their net, as we talk, is right around 30, and that was a neutral site game. Yeah. So that's a quad 1 game for now. It's gonna kind of hover there, but yeah, that's becoming a much stronger resume piece than we thought. And FSU is in the complete garbage right now. They have absolutely tanked. And I say that to point out that Florida's, I guess what we thought could have been at one point maybe pointed to as a nice resume boosting win. You thought, all right, Luke Lauk's coming in, new fresh faces. Maybe they flip things in your no. It's going the other way. But Jai Lucas at Miami has, former Gator, by the way, Jai Lucas has done a good job coaching the Miami Hurricanes. So that's all we've got for now for today's show. We've been on the airwaves for a little more than an hour and a half, actually almost 2 hours now. But we are very appreciative of all y'all staying with us and hearing our thoughts on the Florida Gators, because we do this strictly because we love the Gators. And in all kinds of weather, we all stick together for FLORIDA has been more of just a coping mechanism and just a reminder to us all that, we know we suck. We know things are terrible. We know it's just storming right now. For the past few years, that's been the purpose behind that saying. But now we can remind everyone that in all kinds of weather means some good stuff too. And we have some good stuff to talk about right now. So for Adrian Perez, Neil Shulman, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. Leave a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcasts if you have not already done so. All that stuff helps us bring you more great Gators content. So until next time, y'all, go Gators. Let's hope that Sumrall and company can finish strong in the portal, and let's see this Gator basketball team figure out how to win games on the road and maybe, just maybe, produce another little run that we'll never forget. Go Gators.